Okay, Bob here again, part two of planing the fan braces. Wanted to just correct a couple of things. This brace here is 5 millimeters wide. All of these are, excuse me, I take it back. This brace was 4 millimeters wide, 4 millimeters wide, 4 millimeters wide. The middle one is the only one that's 5. The rest are 4. I've just chiseled this one as well. This is 6.5 high now, and this one's about 7.5 at the moment. I do sand them with, after I chisel them, I sand them with my little plexiglass sanding block, which I showed you in version 1. But yeah, this is the good side. This is the side that goes against the sandpaper. But I neglected to mention that I go through the grits. I do 120, 150, and 220, okay? Right now, this is at 150, and this is my 150 paper. And like I showed you before, I'll bring this to 150. I'll do 120 and 150, and then after I get them all roughed in the shape wise, I will take them to 220 before I carve the A shape. Another thing I wanted to correct, because I just listened to my playback, this bridge pad is not 3/4 of an inch thick, it's 3/4 of a millimeter thick. Okay, I glue it in at 1.5 and I plane it down and sand it to about 3/4 of a millimeter, sometimes a little bit closer to 1/2 a millimeter, and then it tapers down thinner and thinner as you go out to the edges. It's 1 1/4 wide, 10 inches long, 3/4 of a millimeter thick right now, and the thickness gets thinner as you go to the edges, okay? So now you're starting to see what this thing is looking like now that we have 2 braces shaped. I'm going to carve this one right now while you're watching. My target on this one will be 6 millimeters high, okay? And let me see here. Well, you can watch the process one more time if you're interested. 3/4 of an inch Robert Sorby chisel. I've had these for 30 something years. And it's nice and sharp. I like them because they're long. They're quite long. And when I'm doing my initial carving, it's just nice not to hit anything down here, you know, because I have the length, which is nice. Okay. Now I'm going to switch over to a Marples chisel. Super sharp. It's 3/4 of an inch or 20 millimeters. I'm going to start at the end. I also wanted to mention, I started to mention it, but I got off the track. My workboard, I have it clamped on the workbench at an angle. And the reason I do is so that when I come over from this end, it's easier ergonomically for my hand to travel. If I had this thing parallel to the workbench, it would be more difficult for me, especially when I get to these braces. Okay, so instead of my workboard being clamped to the edge of my workbench at a 90 degree, I change the angle and I push the workboard that way. So it's pivoting on an axis up here. Okay, just to make it easier for me to plane or chisel. I call it planing. Essentially, it's doing the same thing. Okay, so we'll go a little more here. And we're on the treble side of the soundboard. And I do this is just feel. I've done this so many times, as most guitar makers have. And I actually I've used this shape for years. And I was happily surprised that on my 1971 Hauser II guitar that I owned for about 4 years, I was happy to see that he shaped his braces the same way as I did, or I do sometimes. I don't always use this shape. Now I'm sort of feeling it. My fingertips are telling me some stuff. And I'm going to come back to here. Now I can see that I just took out a chunk here, and that tells me that I'm cutting in the wrong direction. Okay, so I'm going to keep the blade quite flat here, because now I know, even though I thought I glued this one in the right direction. I mean, it's certainly easy to plane up here, but in the middle it was a little bit chippy. Right there. Let me just see what I got for height. I have plenty of room, so I'm not worried. Let's see, we're at about 8 millimeters, so I'm going to come from this direction, and this seems to be the direction that it likes. Getting pretty low here already. And because of that, I'll switch over to a 3/8 chisel. And once again, I'm letting my fingertips tell me. I can actually feel it and sense it in my mind. I'm drawing an image of the shape of this thing in my mind as I'm cutting here. This is that little troubled area here. No big deal. And I am seeing all of this sort of in, I mean, my right eye works, but it doesn't see clearly right now because I'm having some major issues with it. I'm a professional photographer, and I've always shot with my left eye. So using my left eye is perfectly fine. But that said, it sucks. I'd rather have perfect vision in both eyes. I see 20/20 out of my left eye right now. With my new eyeglasses, I'm seeing about 20/25 out of my right eye. However, that's not the problem isn't sharpness. The problem is I'm seeing it like looking through a very, very thin layer of Vaseline with my right eye. So it makes it tough. My brain takes over, and really it just selects my, it selects my left eye to do, the brunt of the work here. The right eye is only there for peripheral vision. It's just not working. I can see out of it, I just can't see. And I can see out of it and I can see clearly, but it's kind of like looking through Vaseline, if you can imagine that. It's not fun. And I've had it since I had an event in July, almost like a corneal abrasion. That's what it felt like. I was out in Colorado when it happened, and we had to drive all the way home to Orlando. My wife doesn't drive the RV, just me, so it was difficult. Okay, and once again, my brain is mapping this. I can feel it. I could do this a lot faster, but I actually enjoy this part, so I just take my time. I certainly don't want to hit the top wood. Okay. And check through the camera. You can start to see what I'm after now. Now, being on the treble side, I might be slightly on the higher side of the numbers that I'm shooting for. I still have a ways to go. Right now, this is like 7.5, and 6 is a good place where I want to be. So I'm going to go down a little further. Carefully in this area because I know the grain wants to tear a little bit. And now it's fine again. Okay. I always leave extra room for sanding. All right. So I also like to get down and kind of scope this. It's still high. Okay, it's at about 7. Yep. So I'm about an inch, I'm about a millimeter high. If I say inch again, I don't mean it. I mean millimeter. I'm essentially just lowering the center part a little bit here. And as I mentioned before, this is a thicker top, 3.4 right now in the middle section, and it's about 3 millimeters around the periphery at the moment. The final graduation will be done after the top is glued on, and it's done before the bindings go on and after the bindings go on. I have 2 graduations that I do. They're slight, but they're very planned. Okay, we're at about 6.5 now. I'm going to leave it there for a moment, and I'm going to do some sanding with 120 grit. Oop. So I'm getting the rough shapes of these. I'll fine tune it all after I get them all basically shaped. I will go back and really fine tune it, meaning I will be much more critical of my heights. I don't think it matters a tremendous amount. Hauser uses high braces here as well. I'm copying his work. Typically, my braces are never higher than 6. I own a Peña Fernandez, Geronimo Peña Fernandez guitar from the early 1970s. And his braces are very high, and they're sculpted like a sculptor. They're rather bizarre, unlike anybody I've ever seen. And they're very high, much higher than these. And it works fine. Guitar sounds great. Sounds like a good Ramirez. Okay. So now it's nice and smooth. And that's taken to 120. Keep in mind, in the end, it'll be sanded to 220. All right, I've got about 6.5 there. This is 6.5. And I'm going to go a little more sanding on this one. This 120, these braces are so thin, you don't have to sand much, and but it really does give it smooths everything out and makes it a nice parabolic shape. Okay, and then we'll take off the 120 paper and go to 150. These have both been sanded to 150 already. The braces do contribute to the sound. And that's an open statement. They not only support the structure of the top, but they also contribute to the sound of the guitar. That's why you have to figure out, you know, how high, how wide, what shape you want to make them. Are you going to just round them over? The last guitars I made all had straight braces that were rounded over and scalloped at each end only. Other than that, they were straight on the top. And that's another design I use, which I've used for years. But I do use these parabolic braces a lot, especially probably 20 years ago. I used them a lot. Okay. And I'll spare you the vacuum cleaner, the shop vac. All right, so just now, even shutting my eyes and feeling them. Okay. This is a part that I do. It's not just the numbers, but it's a sort of a maelstrom of all the information that I can gather. Okay, so now we're at just above 6. Yeah, maybe 6 1/3. And for right now, I'm going to take a tiny bit more here. Okay. I like to look at it from, I have a bad knee right now, so I can't get down as far as I'd like to. But I am seeing a graduation of the highest brace in the center, getting a little bit lower, getting a little bit lower, okay? And that's what I want to see until I finally chisel this outside one. This number 1 bar is what I call it. Okay, let me see what that looks like through the camera. Okay, yeah, well, you get to see, you can see it now, the contrast between a brace that hasn't been shaped yet and a braces that have been shaped, and braces back here that have not been shaped yet. And keep in mind that like I said, the bottom of each brace is parabolic to fit the curvature of the dished out soundboard. So I don't glue them in straight. I glue them, I literally scribe them to the top. I push down the top and I look at the void and I plane each end and smooth it out until it fits really nicely without any pressure, okay? and I glue them in scribed to the curvature of the soundboard. Mine is scooped out about 1.5 millimeters. I have about a 1.5 millimeter dome. It's just under 2 millimeters, okay? And when I finally do my bridges have to be scraped, the bottom of my bridges, to fit the curvature of the top. So that my soundboards are domed, so the bottom of my bridges have to be concave in order to fit into that dome on the other side, not on this side. Okay, I think I cleared up a couple of things I wanted to clear up. Bridge pad 3/4 of a millimeter, 3/4 of 1 millimeter, 1 1/4 wide for this patch, and 10 inches long. And I taper the ends at 2 inches out. I taper them down so that I end up with 3/8. You can't see it right now, but each end, you'll see it in maybe a part 3 video. Bob signing out, and have a good day.